It's the third week of LCS, and I'm joined right now by Parth, who has finally agreed to do an interview with anyone. Why are you so secretive about yourself?
Wait, I did not agree to do this interview.
Oh, you were just forced into it?
Yes.
Okay. Who has finally been forced into doing an interview. Again, why are you so secretive? Like, you want to say an enigma or something?
No, I see my job as working for the team
Yeah.
and coaching the team, and I don't really need to build a brand or anything. So,
But I mean, even in traditional sports, you have like the coaches come out and give kind of like one word answers to questions from the press or whatever.
isn't that just bullshit? Why would you want to go out and give one-word answers?
I
I'd
don't
rather
know.
just
I'm just
decline.
saying there's a precedent here for coaches doing interviews. It's fine. Whatever. I've got you here. Let's start talking.
Okay.
How do you feel about TSM so far, the split? Last year, everybody was like, this is the year of TSM. It's all coming together. This year seems to have been off to a little bit of a rockier start.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're working on a lot of things, both in game and out of game. It's spring split. We lost Peter, who was one of our main shot callers, and he wasn't like the shot caller in the sense that he controlled everything on the map, but he did two things. He was very decisive about the plays he wanted, and he was very creative in the way he approached the game state when he played the game. And so we have to sort of develop a lot of that in our roster right now, because Turtle had his own place in Immortals, and just taking that piece and plugging it in isn't really going to work. But Turtle himself also has a lot of game knowledge. So we have to not only use Turtle and Bjergsen to sort of start off with like a base that we have, but also help Vincent and sort of Kevin grow into their roles a lot more.
So do you see this again? You kind of mentioned that Peter's role was being very decisive and creative. Do you see that decisiveness and creativity being spread out across all the members of TSM now, or in terms of developing that, or are you still looking for that person who can kind of be the decisive voice?
Sure. So I mean, this is spring split, right?
Yeah.
And instead of teaching the team how to win the game right now, which is just play one style and just hammer that in, we have to sort of explore and create play a lot of different types of compositions. Not only that, different roles require different things. Like if Kevin is on a tank versus if Kevin's on a carry.
It's a very loud car going by. Continue.
Yeah, so if Kevin's on a tank versus him as he's on a carry, he needs different resources. He needs to call for different things from the team in terms of flank wards, or he needs wards on his side. If he has TP or not, it also depends. Changes depends on whether or not we were playing against team fight or split push comps. So the way Kevin has to shot call the game if he's on a carry is a lot different than if he's on a tank. And same with Vincent, if he's on someone like Thresh where he can make a lot of plays versus if he's more supportive like Zara and Karma. The things he needs to say and add to the team are a lot different. So while last year we just had Peter and Bjerg sort of take in a lot of what they knew and shot call together, this year, especially in the spring, is all about developing the players that we have to be more diverse. Because when we approach Worlds, we need Kevin to be able to play not only tanks but carries. We need Vincent to not only play playmakers but also supportive champions. So spring is a time where we can explore and help players be more well-rounded, and then narrow down our focus as it gets closer to playoffs. So yes, we have a slower start than you'd sort of expect, but hopefully by playoffs we'll have a lot of the decisiveness and creativity that we showed last year.
Are you still ultimately you need that one person who's going to be like, all right, we're going in on this dragon fight, or we're going in on this baron fight, or we're engaging them right now outside of our base. Are you looking for one person to do that, or is this trying to be like something where you build up kind of a communal voice?
I don't. So it just depends on every team does this differently. There's this conception where on every team there's one person who shot calls, or there's one person who's decisive, there's one person who calls this. I think we're just trying to figure out our own paradigm, which is why it's slower. It's sometimes if you're playing on a champion that's comfortable, you understand the unique strengths of that champion, like Bjergsen and Ryze. We can play macro kind of well on it, like you saw in that one game. Same thing with Vincent. When he's on certain champions, he shot calls differently than he does in others. So I think it's more of a case-to-case basis rather than just one person who's doing all of it at all times.
Let's take a step back and talk a little bit about coaching in general. One of my favorite things to do is talk to AD carries or mid laners or top laners, whatever, and ask them sort of what they think of the other people in their role. I don't. It's very infrequent that I talk to coaches. I'm kind of curious from you. How do you view yourself in comparison to other coaches? Not just on the level of like, oh, I think I'm pretty good or whatever, but also in terms of how does that play out? Like AD carries compete in bot lane normally. Coaches, I guess, compete during pick and ban. I mean, how do you see this stuff?
So there's different facets of coaching. I kind of like to split it into 3 or 4 categories. You have like someone with game knowledge. You have someone who with systems, which is you sort of incorporate game knowledge and help them teach the players. Because if you just have game knowledge, which is what a lot of coaches end up having, if you're not able to translate the knowledge that you have to the players, then all that knowledge is useless. Then you have like a third coach or person who, or not person, but like the
Role.
third facet of it is being able to help them with like mental and physical health. Like that's just like completely outside of the realms of like game knowledge and systems. And then the fourth part is just having some sort of authority or leadership or buy-in from the players that you know what you're doing and in whatever role you have. Like Weldon last year, he might not have like the best game knowledge and he knew like nothing about systems or pick ban, but since he knew a lot about what he brought to the team, they bought into his system. And so he was an effective coach because he was able to steer the players outside of game a lot.
Yeah.
In the same way with coaches, like you don't necessarily need to have all four, or you don't necessarily need to have like expertise in like all like different categories. But if you find the strength that you have and you bring that to the team, you're sort of able to like work together out a system. And I think since coaching even right now is so young, there's like no perfect coach. So every coach sort of adapts based on the strengths that they have and the roster that they have.
And so for you specifically, I'm guessing you feel that your authority is in those first two facets. That's how I think a lot of people would perceive you.
Yeah. So I have a roster that doesn't really need a lot of like motivation, and they don't really need someone to like look out for their physical or mental health. They're pretty resilient in that sense. They all go to the gym. They all eat healthy. They've been around. They've been on TSM for a year. All of them now because of Turtle. So like any criticism or comments, it doesn't really get to them. They all have the mindset that they want to be the best and improve. So as a coach, I don't really need to focus on all those things. What I need to focus on is more game knowledge and in particular systems. Like how do I help them improve in this category? If like now that the pick bank system has changed, I need to be in charge of how we need to optimize practice to not only account for the things we're trying to practice, the things we were going to win with this weekend, account for how the enemy team is also looking to practice and sort of combine all of that together. I think systems and authority are two like very underrated aspects of coaching right now. People just look at people with like, oh, they have a lot of game knowledge, but that doesn't mean like it translates across like all rosters and all people.
So do you feel, kind of going back to the other coaches situation, do you feel that you have any kind of direct rivalry with these guys? I mean, you go up on the stage, you walk behind the players and do a lot of like, looking very serious while you're looking at a notebook or something. All the coaches do. And then you go walk off and like shake their hand and whatever. Do you feel like, is that representative of a rivalry or any kind of direct relationship you have with these guys?
So the rivalry, I mean, it does kind of happen on stage, but so I mean, I've worked against Tony for a long time. He beat us at MSG, and then again at Spring Playoffs last year. I firmly believe that we lost Spring Playoffs last year because at that point in time, I was not as good a coach as Tony was. So I like improved on it a lot. I had to study like basically how CLG practices because we have all like their practice drafts and what they look to focus on. And then you sort of like build your knowledge from there. Playing against Tony and Reaper is definitely like something that I feel like a lot of more pressure on me because they have like their own systems of doing things, and when we clash on stage, people just see like, oh, there's a pick ban, right? But behind that pick ban is the entire week leading up to like what you ended up practicing, because that's like the week that you don't scrim. Not only that, 2 or 3 weeks prior to that, every team does like a different thing. Like Reaper will do one thing against us, and then he'll surprise us by doing like X thing. I'm not gonna like share that. And then and the same thing, like we do something where we hide certain things from certain teams even before in practice. So not only is the pick ban on stage representative of like what you think is the best going into the team, it's also like the mind games leading up to it in the last like 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm not sure if like every team does this, but I know for a fact that Reaper and Tony does it, and it's really fun to play.
That's nice. So it sounds like, yeah, there is like, it's not just about the five players that are on the rift against each other or the 5-on-5. It's also about you guys kind of figuring out how best to set up the battlefield ahead of that fight.
I mean, it's so. This is an overrated state that like coaches control all the pick ban. I think coaches just have the last decision on the pick ban on stage, but outside of that, mostly in practice and before, it's a constant conversation with your players, your team, making sure the team compositions make sense, making sure that you're playing to their strengths, making sure that you're practicing the things that you want them to learn from. And so uh, until it gets on stage, it's sort of a collaboration. Once it gets on stage, I think usually, or at least there should be one decisive person making the last call on everything that's picked.
All right, so we've talked a lot of serious stuff, kind of, because again, this is my first chance to interview you. A little bit about, first off, do you have like an afro? I've heard you previously had an afro. Talk to me about this.
So in high school, I was kind of going through a rebellious phase against my parents, and so I just didn't cut my hair, and it grew into an afro, and they hated it, so I kept it going.
Yeah.
I've never since gone back to it, and never will.
If you ever had a rebellious phase against your new parents, who I kind of perceive to be like Andy and Lena, would you ever consider growing an afro back out again just to kind of get at them?
Wait. They're my parents.
Yeah. They're just off camera right now for people that don't know.
I have no comment.
Okay. No, you don't agree with that?
No.
Okay. All right. And then finally, I see that you're wearing a lovely new TSM jacket. I feel like we could do a whole piece on TSM jackets through the years. Do you have any interesting things to comment about it? I've heard in the past that hoodies are so comfortable. This was in a TSM Legends episode.
Every time TSM releases a new article of clothing before playoffs, we lose that playoff.
Okay.
So the deal this year is we release these nice, comfortable jackets before playoffs start, so we can get our tilting out of the way now.
Yeah.
So when playoffs come around, we'll actually win.
Is this a collaboration between you, like the coaching staff, and the merchandise team on TSM to create this new kind of paradigm for TSM's chances ahead of playoffs?
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Built through experience.
Oh, good. It's neat to see the synergy between the different parts of TSM. I appreciate it. Anything you want to say to any of the TSM fans or the Parth fangirls who will be eagerly Googling for the Fro picture of you?
I have a girlfriend, so
Oh, well.
that's pretty much it.
Sorry, ladies. Anything else?
Thank you to all the fans that support us. I will probably not do many interviews, but if I do end up doing them, I'm glad it was with Travis the first time.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now you can get out of the way. Thank you so much for the interview. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of our coverage of all things esports here at Yahoo Esports.